So what we have here in the wild is a supermarket celeriatus, a very, very common breed for the tight gardener. So realistically speaking, this is a celery grown from the bottom of a supermarket celery that you just buy when you want to cook a dish with a whole heap of celery, or maybe you're doing celery sticks, putting peanut butter in them. Really probably the best way you could possibly eat celery. And it has to be crunchy peanut butter and not that salt-free stuff, because that's rubbish. Now that we've got that out of the way, I want to make the case for why this is a good addition to your garden. Now, I was actually talking with someone who was saying, whatever you do, don't grow celery. And I had to disagree with them because personally, I think if you're growing a whole heap of celery and you're expecting that kind of supermarket style celery where you're getting, a whole plant, and normally it goes to waste. It's hard to use that much unless you're doing celery sticks every day for lunch. This is the kind of plant which is of questionable value in the garden. However, as we found out, growing it this way is actually, I would say, the best way. We put this in, we grew it off the base of a celery from the supermarket. We've tried to replicate that here, but I actually think this got a little bit too wet and it's a little bit moldy, so I'm not sure if this one's gonna work. We just had way too much water in the base of that little container. However, this one, it was the same situation. All we did is we put a little bit of water in, we got it going, we got it sprouting, some roots coming out, planted in the garden. Very, very important to note, it took a long while to get established. So it took probably a couple of months before it was kind of growing this kind of growth that you'd actually use in cooking. However, the really, really cool thing about having one of these growing is that we don't really use large amounts of celery. It's a really, really good addition in something like a tuna sandwich, which is something my wife does really well. And that celery makes such a big difference because the texture, like something nice and crunchy in there, alongside the tuna and the mayo, and a bit of onion or something like that, it is so, so good. In contrast, I really like putting a little bit of celery in if I'm doing a bolognese. So like if I'm doing a bolognese with a bit of carrot and some celery as the base, that works really, really well as well. And again, it's a very subtle flavor. I don't know that you really even get the texture or anything like that. It's just something that just adds a little bit to your bolognese. And there's probably Italians who are having an absolute heart attack that I've mentioned doing that. But yeah, if you're doing like a tomato-based sauce and you're gonna put carrots and some celery in, growing something like this, you'll just cut off a couple of branches, and unless you're doing an industrial size serving, this will do you plenty. So I actually think this is a really, really good addition to the garden, and this has gone quite well. And hopefully yours will go a little bit better than this and it won't have the molding issues. I'll give you a closer up look with a bit of a warning that it is getting a bit gross. But it was looking really, really healthy and really good prior to overwatering it. And it's such a simple thing to do because you go out and you buy a celery at the supermarket, use it for whatever you use it for, hopefully don't waste too much, and then grow your own, and hopefully don't have to buy another one at the supermarket for quite a long while. Because sometimes it's like $6 or $8 for a full celery. Obviously it's a bit cheaper for a half of one. And while that's not the end of the world, no wastage is obviously better. And you can see it there, it's just got some mold around the edges. I don't know, if you were gonna leave this for a couple of months, you could certainly plant it and just see how it goes. But once it's moldy like this, it is a little bit of a health hazard. Don't leave it in your kitchen. Go either chuck it out, put it in the compost maybe, or plant it and see how you go. But let's have a look at a seedling we bought at the same time that we put these in. So you might be asking yourself, do you need 2 celery plants? That's gonna entirely come down to how much celery you eat and use. And I think the homegrown stuff, it has quite a thin stem from what we've had so far. Maybe that's a watering issue, maybe it's a nutrient issue. Regardless of what it is, if you're expecting those really big stems that you can put your peanut butter in, you're probably not gonna wanna do it the way we do it because we have not achieved that. But regardless of that, this was the store-bought one. It was a seedling that we bought just to try out because we'd never grown it before. And while this has grown bigger, it seemed as though the leaves are just a little bit more affected. I don't know, maybe it's the variety, but they seem to be affected by a little bit of a pest. Early on, it grew very, very poorly compared to our supermarket bought one that we just planted the base. And while it's now overtaken the supermarket plant, and obviously has way, way more to it, and is realistically probably the better investment if you're only going to grow one, at the end of the day, we could have made do with the supermarket one. So there was no real need to buy this seedling, which was, again, probably like $6, when we could have just gotten away with, doing the supermarket one alone, having the one plant, or if you need to buy a couple from the supermarket, just use those bases, see how you go. Maybe grab the bases from someone else who's bought them if you don't want to even spend the money. You're going to be golden. Really, really cool addition to the garden. And like I said, it's a useful thing in cooking, if you cook with it.